how much she and Rita have meant in my life. You have been an incredible encourager, a teacher, and just a complete inspiration. I mean, you can do more in 1 hour in your day than what I can do in a week.
No comparing.
So I just want you to be encouraged. Kenita has been on our campus several times, doing similar kinds of teachings to what she's going to do with us today. She's spoken to our class also, but like she talked to the whole of our campus in the past. So anyway, I will now hand it over to you. Welcome.
Great.
Kenita.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to be with you all today. I know it's really early for all y'all over there in the middle of winter and thick of snow and cold, and apparently more ice is coming. So I wish you the best, and I hope you can stay warm. Speaking of that, I'm actually in India, so I am coming in via Zoom, and it is 7 p.m. in the evening, so I've had a full day, but you guys are just starting, so hopefully you'll be able to engage and enjoy this material. Before we go forward, I just want to say, I want you to put this sentence on your paper. Live locally, but think globally.
Why don't I have a pen? It's okay.
Live locally and think globally. All right, so like Lisa said, my name is Kenita Scripsma, and I'm the founder and CEO of SEMA Global Consulting, and we do cultural education, we do transformational coaching, and also leadership development. And so a lot of our work is done with corporates and universities and colleges, individuals, couples, parenting groups, a variety of groups, because the heart of our work is DEI, which is the diversity, equity, and inclusion. However, when I get to work with Christian organizations as yourself, it is really exciting for me because it becomes like a full package. We cannot do this DEI work without the Lord's help. And so that's how I'm going to weave the material today to share with you, because we can, right? All right, so without further ado, I am going to share my screen so we can make the most of this time. My husband and I relocated to India in 2021. We sold everything and moved here. So if you could just do a thumbs up, tell me that you can see my screen.
Yep.
Fabulous, thank you. That's your exercise for the day. Just kidding. All right, how do I do this again? Oh yeah. I am not very savvy when it comes to technology, so for those of you who are, just be patient, please. Thank you. There we go. Good? Did you see the big screen?
Yep.
Fabulous. All right, so we're going to talk about understanding culture to promote inclusion. Because we can talk a lot about race relations, we can talk a lot about being racially understanding about situations, but at the end of the day, it's really about our culture and individuals' culture that impacts our communities and our relationships. And so that's what we want you to focus on today, is thinking about culture, whether it's your ethnic culture, your family culture, your company culture, your school culture, but it's actually the culture that you yourself swim in, okay? So there's some desired outcomes in this group today. We want to help you develop a greater self-awareness of your own cultural tendencies. We want you to think about intersectionality of societal culture and organizational culture, because that's going to be a little different. We want you to recognize nuances of your own culture and the culture of others. And last but not least, we want you to be able to embrace acceptance and empathy rather than awareness and tolerance. And that's going to be really crucial because so often people are all about being aware of something, but they're not really moving forward to help be an advocate or support to other people. I just need to get this off my screen. 1 second. Hide floating panel. Thank you. There we go. All right. All right. So there we go. So this is session 1. We're going to break it out into 2 sessions, right? We've got today together, and then we've got Friday together as well. So I want you to be paying attention with the stuff that we have today. you've got all those handouts. Some of them will apply to today, some of them will be homework, and if I forget to refer to something, please, please, please ask. If you have any questions, I was just gonna say, put it on chat, but you're not on your computers. So just write down your question and we can be able to get to it at the end, hopefully. If not, we'll for sure make some time on Friday to answer your questions as well. So session 1, this is gonna involve the goals that we'll have. We're gonna define culture. We're gonna explain hot and cold climate. And perhaps you've heard of the book by Sarah Lanier called Foreign to Familiar. She does a fabulous job helping individuals understand that hot and cold climate culture, but we take it a step further and help you understand where the middle ground is. It's really a simple little tool that we give to folks for you to understand that better. And then of course there's the cross-cultural living. We will touch on that a little bit, but we'll get more of that in depth in the next session. Then the handouts that you'll have, that you have in your packet are the Who Am I page, definition of the want page, the ability to chart your want page, and then a cross-cultural chart, which again, in the cross-cultural we'll talk in session 2. All right, so let's start with the definition of culture. I'm gonna want some engagement, so you might have to yell from your seat in case I can't hear you. But here we go, a set of shared values, understandings, assumptions, and goals that are learned from earlier generations, imposed by present members of a society, and passed on to succeeding generations. So tell me, what are some of the words that jump out at you? We don't have a lot of time, so let's try to engage as much as we can this morning. What are some words that jump out at you?
Or phrases.
Shared values.
Shared values? Thank you. Anything else? All right, how about assumptions? We all know what happens when you assume, right? So assumptions. Anything else?
Definitions.
Say it really
Well,
loud. What?
Sorry, did somebody want to say something?
Yeah, someone wants. Go ahead. Did you want to say?
I didn't say anything.
How about passed?
No? Okay.
Passed on would be something that jumps
Passed
out.
on.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. The one that really jumps out at me is the things that are learned from earlier generations. So if it's your grandmother's recipe on how to make a special soup, great. Keep it, pass it on, do what you want with it, right? That's fabulous. But when it comes to race and culture, there are some things that we need to be paying attention to and that are passed on from earlier generations. You don't have to watch the news too long to not realize that there are some messagings or some messages that are given out to people that are based on the systemic issues that are happening in the country, right? These are passed down from earlier generations. Not everything that our parents did or our grandparents did is helpful for our generation. And then you all are probably half my age, right, Lisa?
Yep.
At least.
Yep.
And so when you think about that, you guys have stuff in your generation that we don't have. And then we have to unlearn some things and learn some things in order to survive in your generation and understand how to connect. So sometimes the things we learn from previous generations are actually not so great, right? Some of the racist experiences that our generation has had, we don't want to pass those on to you except to make sure that you understand what those were. We also don't want to pass on certain mindsets. We have some good friends, they've been good friends over the years, but their parents are very racist. They're extremely racist. Even in now, 2023, they still have some very strong opinions and perspectives that do not belong. So when we read a definition like this, it's really important to, not just select what we want to listen to, but just kind of have your antenna up to understand that not everything that we learn from previous generations is a good idea. All right, we want to see the cultural iceberg. I think you have that in your handout. My apologies if you don't, but you can look it up on the web and you can see it. This is all over the place. There are several icebergs. There's some for stress. There's some for emotional health. There's some for anger management. But this one is on cultural iceberg for culture. And basically, if you look at where the line is, the things that are above the line are easy to see. So when I look out at the room, and you guys are really far away, I'm seeing people of different ethnic backgrounds. I'm seeing that there are only 6 people in the classroom plus your professor. So I'm making an observation of the culture of your classroom might be really intimate, or maybe it's not as engaging, right? Just based on how many folks are in the room. And so when we think of race, we look at the first thing, we see people, and we look at what we can only see. We decide based on what we can only see. And that's above the line, the things that are easy to see. And I do think this is kind of a silly iceberg because it does not say race as something easy to see, which makes you wonder, at least it made me wonder, who built this? Why don't they want to admit that race is something that we look at, skin color? So we pay attention to what's easy to see, and then we make our mind up about what we think about that person or about that culture. Moving to India has really taught me a lot about that, even worse than in the US. And my experience was, I was born in India, grew up in Canada, and I've lived in the US for 28 plus years. And then my husband and I relocated here about 19 months ago, back to India. And so living with this cultural iceberg in my story has been pretty challenging because a lot of people are just looking at what's above the line for the things that are easy to see, and then they have judgment calls. The people's perspective of America is typically the stories that come out of LA, New York, Chicago, and those are not realistic. And then Hollywood, right? So when you look below the line, you see things like beliefs and assumptions. You see things like relation to authority, self-concept, gender roles. Ooh, that's a big one. Competitiveness. Or how about the attitude toward the environment? And so it's really important the more you understand somebody and to understand culture and to understand who they are, to practice moving that line down. So perhaps you have a friend that you're like, this friend is from a different ethnic background, or they're just really from a different city. You might be the same skin color, but you're from different families, which means family culture. You've learned different things, right? Your job is to help lower that line so that person can be seen. And their job is to do the same thing in a friendship, in a relationship. I'm in an interracial marriage, and we've been married for almost 29 years. And that is no joke. Serious practicing lowering the line for both of us. Not just for each other in our marriage, but also for the rest of the family, for the extended family. Sidebar, at 28 years old, when my husband was 28, I was the first Indian person that he ever met. Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1993, okay? So life has changed quite a bit. We are mixing and mingling with folks that are different than us all the time now, and it's really important that we take the time to understand. And why do we want to do that? Because God has created us to be fearfully and wonderfully made. And all of that stuff below the line is that fearful and wonderful stuff for us to be understood and to be able to understand each other. So understanding culture helps us to live more than just skin deep, right? Show me with a show of hands, who here thinks they have more of a story than just their skin color? Awesome. And you know what? That is so true. And so when you're having a bad day, or if somebody does something that is racially motivated, try to remind yourself and surround yourself with people who believe the same thing in terms of you are more than your skin color. And you are a story. Your narrative started somewhere. And so even for me, when I'm in the US, I'm considered a woman of color, which even that phrase has gotten really messy because when people say woman of color, they often think of one particular narrative or one particular ethnic background, ethnic group. And when I'm in the US, or when I'm in India here, I am an American. And there are days where I'm like, no, I'm Canadian. I want to be Canadian. So I'm both. I'm actually all three. Can be very confusing. We call that third culture. Some of you might be having that same notion in your story. Perhaps you were born in a different country and now you're living in the US and going to school. Or perhaps you were born in the US and maybe you lived elsewhere for a chunk of your years and came back. Or even still, you were born in the US, you're part of a particular ethnic background and an ethnic community, but the people around you don't see you as American, right? So there's some of that happening in all of us, and I just want to encourage you. You are a story. You have a narrative. It's okay to stand confidently in your narrative and surround yourself with people who believe you in that space as well. So we have hot climate culture or cold climate culture. I related to Sarah Lanier's book, Foreign to Familiar. And I remember reading that book several years ago, and I just burst out laughing. And my husband's like, what is so funny? Like, why is that book so funny? And I'm like, because it's my life in print. All the stories, all the nuances, it was in print, and I wasn't making any money on it, so go figure. And I just thought, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to teach this material to folks, so folks could understand and appreciate their nuances matter, your nuances matter, and but how do they matter, and how do they fit into your story? That's something that only you can learn and you can engage in. So that Who Am I handout, I want you to look at for a second. You can work on it for your homework. We don't have a lot of time to spend on these papers in this class right now. What we're trying to do is just expose the material so you can have a sense of where you might journey in your own personal story. But that Who Am I page, it starts off at the top saying, where did my story start, right? And that's what I want you to remember. Your story started somewhere, and it has continued in a different context since you're at the college there and in the US. And so all of that impacts who you are today, and thus the question, who am I? Any questions or comments so far? I know that's a lot, and it probably feels like a fire hose, especially at 8:30 in the morning for all y'all. But do you have any questions or comments you want to make? I love an engagement, right, Lisa? I'm quite the extrovert.
Yes, you do.
Thrive with people.
Yep, she loves it. I think it wasn't didn't feel like a fire hose. It felt like,
Okay.
We've talked about some of the same things already in the class. So now you've just
Great.
put a fresh spin on it.
Fabulous. Thank you.
I mean,
So,
let me just say though, we haven't talked about hot climate and cold climate, just FYI.
Great.
So those terms.
Yep,
So what's on the screen right now is we know some of those terms that are in those bubbles, but we haven't put it in a hot versus cold.
Awesome, great, good segue. So, understanding culture means understanding the overlap, that there is an overlap. Without looking at the words for a second, we've got the blue circle and the red circle, and what that simply means is, of course, cold climate and hot climate, right, is what we're talking about. But they're also two different colors. So you can imagine for a minute that these are two different people. Who knows a person different than them? Don't worry, I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. I'm simply trying to get you to participate. Who knows somebody different than them? All right, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I wish we were in the room together. So when you meet someone different than you, there can be anxiety, there can be stress, there can be wonder, there can be question, there can be curiosity, right? We want curiosity. That's a really good thing. Unfortunately, we don't get that all the time from some folks. So what do you do? Well, this is where we come in. Our company has built this Venn diagram using her nuances, just so that you can get a sense of what that looks like in terms of how we can relate to one another and level the playing field. So when we look at these nuances, we've got on the cold climate side, and you have this in front of you, you've got task, direct, private, individualistic, linear time, or maybe it says structured or unstructured time in your document, hospitality, which is structured, low context. And these are nuances that are common in cold climate cultures. And so, before I go too far, cold climate cultures are basically, if you look at the globe, anything north and west of the globe, okay? Hot climate cultures, in general, are east and south on the globe, in general. Some of these Eastern European countries kind of get us all mixed up a little bit. And so just be thinking of it in kind of that way, east and south, and then cold would be north and west countries and cultures. And so the hot climate nuances would be things like relationship-oriented, being indirect, inclusive, group-oriented, cyclical time, which might be a little bit more unstructured. And then hospitality would be unstructured or flexible and high context. So if I look at a person, I'm not going to see these things, right? I'm just going to see their skin color, or I'm going to see their hairstyle, or I'm going to see their facial structures that might be common to a particular ethnic group. So why does it matter that we understand culture? Because really, if we are living into our cultural nuances with a friend, then they don't understand them. They might be confused, or they might be thinking, well, I thought Asian people were like this, or I thought Indian people were like this, or I thought African Americans were like this. That's exposing some bias right? That's not for today, we'll talk about it later. But that bias, that my opinion, my stereotypes of so-and-so. So these hot climate, cold climate traits start to help us understand our stories, our narratives. I was born in a hot climate, so India, but my life in Canada and the US shaped me to have more cold climate nuances. And so now all of a sudden, that's the underneath stuff. That's the stuff below the line that can be revealed as a result of understanding culture. So we have this overlap, and we came up with these 4 words that really help us bridge the gap between two people that are different. Unity, acceptance, authenticity, and freedom. So let's take unity, for example. As believers, as Christians, followers of Christ, we automatically have that unity in Christ. And so maybe you're thinking, yeah, but my friend is not a believer, so I don't have that unity. Yes, you're correct. You don't have that unity in Christ. But guess what? Does that person want unity in a relationship? Yes. Do you want unity in a relationship? Yes. That's what we're talking about. Find that common ground, whether it's a common goal, whether it's hobbies, whether it's your love for food, love for travel, whatever those things are that you can be unified about, and find some sense of unity with that person that's different than you. That's what we're asking you to do. And as a believer, it is so crucial that we allow the Lord to help us bridge that different gap with another person using his unity, right? Asking him to empower us to be more unified with people that are different than us. The second one is acceptance. Who here has a need for acceptance? All right, only your professor put her hand up. Y'all pay some attention to your professor. Awesome. Just kidding. All right, so acceptance. We all have a need for acceptance, right? In different ways. Now, some might say, do you mean affirming? I'm not talking about that. I'm not getting into that whole conversation. I'm simply saying, when you deal with someone that's different than you, in any capacity, are you willing to show them acceptance? See, as believers, we are accepted in Christ. Christ accepts us. He loves us. He receives us just the way we are. Are we willing to offer that to somebody else? So the opposite would be, are we judging them? Or are we willing to be open and gracious and kind and showing a sense of acceptance? I don't think it's affecting your generation, but it definitely was in mine. I think Lisa can agree if she also heard that in that similar vein, where we often were taught about racial tolerance. And why did we have racial tolerance? Why do we still have it? That word tolerance says, I will put up with you till you do something that annoys me, and then I'm going to, walk away or cut you off. So is that what Jesus would do for us? Would he just cut us off because we're doing something that he disagrees with? Now, he doesn't appreciate sin at all. He doesn't like it. He hates sin. That's not what I'm talking about. He is accepting us for who we are, how we are, and what we're bringing to the table. And he's asking us to be used as vessels for people in our life to just show acceptance and genuine love of Christ to other people. Third is authenticity. Authenticity, I have a desperate need for authenticity. Lisa knows. I take every opportunity to just be me. Now, that's not always received, and it was a very long and difficult season for me to be okay with the fact that I was not being received as authentic self, right? Often people want their version of you. And what they're doing is they're saying, I have biases about your ethnic group, and I'm going to look at you through that lens. Not a good idea. Or it's, well, you're Indian. Shouldn't you speak like this? Shouldn't you cook like that? Oh, you are in a love marriage? That's interesting, because all Indians go for arranged marriages, right? So I'm living my authentic story. I'm being me. And the hope is, as I continue to live authentically in a variety of scenarios, eventually that line of my cultural iceberg in my story is lowered where I get to be my full self. Now, authenticity is going to be different for each individual, and each person wants it. I can, without asking for a show of hands, I'm going to assume safely, because of your age group, you want authenticity. Your age group is so much about being real, keeping it honest, being raw, telling it like it is, right? Am I wrong? How about you nod your heads? Let me see some nods. Am I close? All right, the gentleman in the front row, thank you so much. I see your head nodding. So authenticity, we all need it. And, you know, your generation might need it more than our generation. And many people in my generation don't know how to live into that authentic space of their own stories. So please, we have a lot to learn from you. You continue to teach us how to do it and how to do it well. And last but not least is freedom. Freedom is defined completely different for everybody. Freedom for some people might be, oh, they've arrived in the US and now they can be free from war-torn countries or any kind of, situations that are happening in their countries. Whereas freedom in the US, maybe folks are saying, I have freedom, everybody has freedom. Isn't that, what is it? I get this wrong every time, Lisa, don't I? It's the home of the brave and the land of the free. Did I get it right?
Yeah. You start with land of the free and then go home of the brave. But yeah.
Okay, there, what she said, okay. Right? So, but does everybody feel that freedom when they're here, right? No. Turn on the news for 5 minutes and you'll hear all kinds of stories that show us that many people don't feel like they have freedom, that they don't have a voice. I live in a country where, now that I'm in India, there is a lot of talk about women empowerment, but really what's happening, it's a lot of talk, right? Women are still not allowed the freedom to make some decisions. They're not allowed the freedom to be uniquely, authentically, to use another word, who they are. And so you can offer that as a gift to somebody else, allowing them the freedom to feel safe in a conversation, allowing them the freedom to be authentic, and for you to also receive that in a friendship or any relationship. So unity, acceptance, authenticity, and freedom. Those are the things that I know that God has given me, and so why would I withhold that from someone else? It's important for us to remember that as we deal with people that are different than us. And the really cool thing is, when we do that for each other, we grow exponentially. Our phrase here at SEMA Global Consulting is unity results in exponential growth. And that's why we put that up as the first one. Because when we have unity with somebody else, we have the potential to exponentially grow. And when it means with somebody in a different culture, that's very exciting. And we get to live into a more global perspective. Wow, did we really get to the homework already? Holy moly, what time is it? So we have time for some questions. Let's, you know what? You guys have your, that went way too fast.
Well, I think what we could do is, I don't know what the homework is going to be, but if you could walk us through the handout that has that Venn diagram on the top.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I do. I know which
No,
one. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
because
so we've got the who am I. These are the homework notes, right? We've got the who am I page.
Yep.
We've got the definitions of the nuances, which is the page you're referring to, I believe. And then chart your nuances. So let's talk through this
Yeah.
a minute.
Yeah.
The who am I page, what you want to do there is look at that page, put in that first line where my story started, right? So can I just hear from the room, where did your story start? Which means, where were you born?
Grand Rapids, Michigan.
All right,
For me, Grand Rapids, Michigan as well.
okay. Before we continue, can you say your name first and then where your story started? Sorry.
Caden, Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Great, thanks, Dave.
Zuriel, Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Thank you. Young lady next
Keep
to
going.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Mary, and I'm from Ethiopia.
You know what? I can't hear you. Could you turn up your volume just a little bit?
I'm Mary, and I'm from Ethiopia.
Mary,
From where?
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. Great. That's what's tricky with the sound. Sorry. Okay. Who else is in the room?
Richard from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
All right. Thank you, Richard. And a couple more people, I think.
Hannah from Grand Rapids.
Okay.
Micah from Grand Rapids.
All right.
Van from Burma, the border of India.
Lisa, Grand Rapids.
All right. So heavy on Grand Rapids. You've got Ethiopia, Burma, and there was one more. Ethnic.
I don't
Nope.
think so.
Nope. Everyone else was born in Grand Rapids.
Okay, so you've got Burma and Ethiopia represented in the room and Grand Rapids represented in the room. So that's what you want to put in your first line, is where your story started. And then as you go through the definitions of the nuances, do not overthink it. Any overthinkers in the room? Fellow overthinkers? Like yours truly? Don't overthink it, because then you start to convince yourself that you're not that nuanced, or you're just somewhere in the middle of that chart where you'll be able to put it on the chart. So you look at the definitions, and I want you to just circle if you're the hot climate one or the cold climate. So for example, the first one I believe is task and relationship. And so task-oriented would be the cold climate trait, and then relationship-oriented would be the hot climate trait.
Okay, so
maybe
this.
what you want to do is look at the chart, your nuances.
Okay,
page
wait.
first. Yeah.
Just slow down. Since we have time, just slow down. Okay,
Okay.
so she's saying, yeah, the who am I, she's asking you to choose one or the other, and it's based on this sheet, okay? And see how, it says hot and cold with the nuance. Nuance is really the definition. Shadow sides, she's gonna probably talk about next week. Are you gonna talk about shadow sides next week?
Yes, I am.
Yes. So this column here that says nuance, it says relational and task, right? And hot is connected to relational, relationship, and cold to task. So that's just the first one are the top two, and then so on. You can work your way down that sheet, and you can also work your way through all of these nuances and the different definitions that she wants us to think about, okay? All right.
That's great. So what I was going to say is, when you're done with the definitions, let's take a couple of minutes and go through those sheets for the definitions of the nuances. And then what you want to do is chart them on that arrow graph. You have that arrow graph, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Did I give you the personal style assessment?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
You gave both. I have both the here.
Yeah, no, I know the
You
personal
know what
style
ones?
assessment.
Okay, so we have both this one and
Yeah.
this one.
Cool. Okay. So those two will be for your homework, but to chart your nuances, here's what I want you to do. After you circle the definitions of or identify which ones you are, chart them on the graph. If you're over far to one side or the other, then that clearly you're full cold climate or hot climate.
Okay, so.
If you can have an imaginary line down the middle of those arrows, that helps you know one way or the other where you lean. Someone asked, a few people have asked over the time, what if I fall in the middle? And yeah, you can fall in the middle for one or two, but if you're falling in the middle for all of them, then you're not really answering the question the way it's being asked. Because all of us lean one way or another. We might feel comfortable in the middle, but our tendencies make us lean. So I'll be quiet for a minute while you do your nuances.
Okay, so is this the one that you think you should?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the one now. All right, just get this one out.
What was that?
They come in again, really, that's really hard.
There's page number 3.
Oh. And then have this. This is the second column are your definitions. We've talked about some of these in class too, but take a look at the definitions. The second column, the definitions. And then what she's saying is, just sort of guesstimate where you think you are on a continuum, all right? So take 5, 10. Relationship project
Minutes.
center.
right, if we take another minute, before you're able to chart all yours.
Where are we at? Need a minute yet? Yeah, I think we need another minute or two. If you're done, come and help yourself to some lemon coffee cake. You want some?
All right, we'll do another 30 seconds. Some discussion. Just raise your hand up when I know you're done. I don't know you're done. Thank you. Two in the back row.
Who else is done? Raise your hand if you're done.
Oh, there's someone sitting
Four.
over there.
Yes.
Oh, camera.
Oh, sorry.
I was counting.
Yeah. Richard, maybe Richard.
Hi.
Yeah, I didn't want to cover it.
And joins.
Oh, hello. You look cozy warm. I don't miss my layers. I'll give you that. That's great. All right, let's talk about this for a second. So we've covered where your story started, and you've graphed yourself on the chart, have you?
Yep.
Great. Here's what I want you to identify. Based on where your story started, whether that's hot climate or cold climate, I want you to circle the nuances that are opposite to where your story started. So, I think Mary, is that your name, from Ethiopia? Okay, great. So Mary is born in Ethiopia. That's hot climate. She needs to circle all the cold climate traits in her sheet. And everybody else kind of follows suit based on where your story started.
So like, if you're, like the cold is on the right-hand side, so if you put an X, if you're Mary and you're born in hot climate, and if you put any X's that are right of the middle line, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if they're a cold climate, so her story started in hot climate.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So if she has task, for example, that's
Yeah.
a cold climate trait.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is you asked us to graph it on a continuum.
Yes.
So if
Yeah,
it's-
so your first one,
So like my
Your
first
first
one,
one.
I'm further to the right on task.
correct.
Okay,
So that's a cold, so you were
Yeah.
born in cold climate.
yeah.
That's your
So
cold climate.
I guess what I'm
trait.
saying is we need to have an imaginary middle line down our,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
imaginary middle
I
line.
did say that, yeah.
So, I'm sorry if I missed that. So an imaginary middle line down here, okay? And so this is hot. And so is there any that, yeah, no, she's saying, did you put any X's down over here? You didn't. So she has zero.
Okay, so they're all hot climate traits.
Yeah,
Okay, see, that's important fact right there. We'll get to that in a minute. So look at where if you're born in cold climate, so that's all of our Grand Rapids friends. If you're born in cold climate, I want you to circle any hot climate traits that you have put on your graph. Right, there are 7 pairs, and out of the 7 pairs, which ones became hot climate? And I'm gonna need a volunteer, so. Great. I can't remember your name, I'm sorry.
I'm Hannah.
Hannah, did you say Hannah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So which ones did you have that were hot climate?
I had indirect and inclusive.
Awesome, that's what we're talking about. So I'll pick on you for a second too. So Hannah, I meet Hannah at the grocery store, and Hannah and I happen to ask her a question, and she's being indirect with me. But in my mind, I'm like, she's a white American, shouldn't she just be direct with me? Because of the cold climate nuance that generally is in Americans, okay? So, but then it turns out she's indirect, and the other one was inclusive. So she has a preference to be in groups and engage with more people and make sure that there's room at the table for people different than her. That would be the inclusive, group-minded, community-oriented. In cold climate, it says that it's individualistic. Maybe I wonder and I say, boy, Hannah's in my class and I don't really know her well, but she's cold climate, so she's probably going to be really individualistic and she's not going to want to be in our group. But then I get to know Hannah and we talk and we exchange these ideas and learn about each other's cultures, and we realize that, hey, she is an inclusive person. She likes to be in groups, and she's also indirect, which is a hot climate trait. All that to say, we can't judge a book by its cover, and what we discover that even in our own cultural homes, which are our hearts, we think and live differently. And that's why it's important we'll talk about this next session about biases and the lenses that we look through, where then we make those assumptions that people are going to be a certain way until we help lower that line. So as I got to know Hannah, I find out, oh, she's a very indirect person. Okay, that means she's not going to be direct with me, which means I need to remember, oh, she's not lying to me, she's just being indirect. So the more I get to know her, the more comfortable, and I understand, I'm like, Hannah's like that. But my other friend, maybe Lisa, just pick on Lisa. Lisa is, also a Grand Rapids person, but maybe she's more individualistic and private on the cold climate side, right? And so both these people, their stories start in the same place, but it's been, their narrative has grown and developed based on the cultural experiences they've had throughout their lifetime, or their work experience, or their family culture, those kinds of things. So it's important for you to remember when you look at where your story started and how it's been shaped, what are the experiences that have shaped it, that it's not wrong, it's just that's what your cultural home is on the inside. Does that make sense?
mm-hmm.
Was anybody surprised? So let's say, okay, you've got 7 pairs. Who had, so Hannah said she had 2 pairs different than where her story started. Did anybody have more than 2 different than where their story started? Okay, Professor Lisa. I don't know what they call you there, sorry.
No, that's perfect. Yeah,
How many did you have?
I had 3.
So 3 from hot climate, and
Yeah,
I can't do math. 4 from cold
yeah,
climate.
yeah.
Okay.
And
So-
I'm sure it's from living in Turkey. So indirect, just like Hannah, I'm more indirect.
Yes, you are.
Yep. Group oriented
Mhm.
and unstructured hospitality.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's really clear how Lisa shared that she's, her experience living in Turkey for, was it 6 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. a very significant season of her life. 6 years immersed in a culture that shaped her heart, shaped her story, and now she's back, for several years now, back in the US, and still feeling like that cultural home was reshaped. We've lived here for almost 19 months. No, yeah, this week was 19 months in India. And about at the 1 year mark, my husband asked me, what is different for you? Or how have you changed? And of course, as the wife, I'm like, have you not been paying attention how I've changed? Anyway, we digress. But I said, well, my cultural home has new furniture. And that's the inside, my inside heart. It has more clarity about culture, about third culture, about how to, leverage some of my nuances when they're needed. Code switching also became more of a thing here. It is absolutely hysterical. And by code switching, I mean, not that I'm not being authentic, but when I'm with folks in the village, when we work there, I'm speaking Hindi a lot more. I'm dressing more culturally appropriate for those areas. When I'm at my business meetings, I'm dressing more Western and a little bit more formal because the business is higher, and I'm speaking more English. Am I the same person in those two places? Yes. But do I have to code switch in the sense so that the other person understands me and I understand them and we can have better communication? Yes. Now, some people have said that code switching is not authentic. And to them, I say, pay attention to your story. You do it too. And so we all to some point do that, some more than others. And we're comfortable in those arenas, and we need to find those relationships to make sure that we're thriving and remaining authentic. Anyone else? Did you have, okay, Lisa said she had 3, right? Was there anybody else so anybody else surprised by what showed up on their sheet? Were you surprised of the nuances that you had? Did you know them? Or were they like, oh, now they have a name? Okay, keep thinking about that and how that impacts your story. And then ask yourself, so Mary, you're from Ethiopia and you have all hot climate traits. Would you be willing to share how that impacts your story in a full cold climate culture? Based on those hot nuances?
Yeah, that all the cold part, the hot part. Okay. It's a different thing for me. Just living the cold part.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's harder work to try to fit in because of the different nuances that you have?
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I hear you. I know. It is tough for that. And hopefully you're surrounded by friends, like you've got a community group or a support of friends that can help you nurture those hot climate traits, first of all. And second of all, I strongly encourage you to keep thriving with your hot climate traits, okay? And I don't know how long you've been in the U.S., and so think about how being in the U.S. will continue to challenge those nuances, but I want to strongly encourage you to maintain those nuances. They are authentically you. Live into them with the confidence that God has poured into you for that, okay? No matter how hard it gets. And when it does get hard, make sure you surround yourself with like-minded people. That's how we survive. And then we actually thrive. So, for what it's worth, hang in there. Anyone else want to share a little bit about their nuances that they learned or had an aha moment? We have a few more minutes. Y'all have to rush off to your next class. Anyone else want to share?
Anyone else?
what they learned?
Or otherwise I'll call on someone, or we can all do it
There you go.
one by one. Who else is willing to share?
Nobody.
Also, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask that maybe you don't want to ask in the full group, feel free to give them to your teacher, and you can email me, or she can email me, or you can email me at info@semaglobalconsulting.com. It's a simple one to remember. You can also just go to my website and reach me through there.
What's that?
All right. Who else is willing to share? We need someone else to chat through this.
One more share. One more share.
Zuriel, Richard, Micah. Zuriel, why don't you?
Maybe they're all
why don't you go?
private. Did y'all write private on your, who wrote private on their sheet?
No,
Who's
Zuriel
private?
didn't.
There you
Zuriel
go.
didn't.
See, I won't pick on you then.
So-
I respect that.
So he doesn't have private on his sheet, so go ahead.
Oh, there you go.
Zuriel.
Can you take one?
Yeah, I didn't put private, I put inclusive.
Okay.
Yeah, most of my traits being from Grand Rapids, they were all in the cold climate, and the only ones I had in the hot climate were being inclusive and the high context one.
High context.
Yeah, and so
Wonder
in your
people
family, is
and
that how you
trans-
learned the high context and inclusion?
Yes, because I grew up as an only child, and so basically it was me, my mom, my dad, and I always, kind of respect and listen to their authority and whatever words or advice they're giving me. I take it
Okay.
to heart.
Okay, great, thank you for sharing that. And can I ask, what ethnic background is your family? I can't see the screen very clearly, so,
My parents are from the Philippines.
okay, so right there, that's hot climate, Filipino culture, very common, inclusive, large families, joint families, right?
Yes.
It takes a village, literally.
Yes.
India is the same way, so Philippines. So you can see how generationally that got passed down to you. And that's actually a really positive trait to have generationally and how we implement that. So that's awesome. Yeah, our daughter-in-law is Filipino as well,
Okay.
so
That's really
kind of
cool.
high five there. Thanks for sharing, appreciate it. All right,
Global.
anybody have any questions? We've got a few minutes, any questions or clarifications, whether it's personal or whether it's about this material. We will be covering more on bias and some other items next time.
Yeah, shadow sides are really, really good to it's one of my favorite parts of your lecture.
Okay,
Yeah, and then what else? So shadow sides and
yeah, we'll be doing, I didn't explain the personality test. It wasn't on these slides, because Lisa, when we did the class last time, it was one, like the full session thing.
yeah, it was only one. It was, yeah.
Yeah. So, forgive me for forgetting some of these pieces. But your personality assessment, you guys can do this on your own, at home, and then you can
That's
come back
this
and
one.
report on it on Friday. Yeah.
Oh.
The personality assessment is the one with the chart on one side and then the graph on the other. Again, do not overthink it. Fellow overthinkers, we need to shut that one off, and just whatever the question says about how you're energized in one column, the E, and how you're organized in the other column, that's the O. And when you get your number, after adding up the circled numbers for E and the number for O, then you put it on the graph on the back. And that will help you understand if you are people-oriented or task-oriented. And that's really crucial in terms of how you learn, what you do for your job eventually, your career, how you interact with people, and it just kind of gives you a deeper sense of understanding your own personal culture. And it might end up looking different than your parents. Your parents might be somebody that's very people-oriented and very disorganized, whereas you might feel like you're highly task-oriented. And very different from your parents, and that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You need to understand what you are for you, and then how you can implement that accordingly, okay? So make sure you talk about how you circle the things about how you're energized, and then how you're organized, and then put them on the graph. Any questions about that little assignment that you can take home? All right.
Great.
There you go.
Yeah, I think if it's okay with everyone, we'll close down now. I have to be part of the chapel this morning, so. And giving you this 15 minutes, I feel like that's a little gift for you to get this done. It's on top of your other homework. So I don't like to give you extra stuff. So this 15 minutes, I would encourage you just to do this personality test a minute and then flip it over and chart it.
So,
Yeah, that's really good because the information is fresh in your mind and now's the time to kind of get it on the paper. And keep talking about it, have the dialogues with the friends and with each other. And
Doing
keep
to
unpacking it.
people.
excellent. Thank you so much, Kenita.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
We'll see you on Friday to finish this up.
Yes, sounds good.
Okay.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Have
Yeah.
a great day.
You
Stay
too.
warm and safe.
Being
Sleep
with the
well.
people.
Will do.
Yeah, all right.